as you know, Donald Trump has announced, and we talked about this yesterday. He came out of the meetings and announced that they were calling off the world's largest war games. Now, I am not a big proponent of war games. There is, however, we do have obligations to a lot of allies in that neck of the woods. Some of who are demilitarized, like Japan, and those war games are to basically say that there is some type of defense mechanism in the event that, I don't know, I mean, it was only a couple of months ago that North Korea fired a couple missiles across essentially the bow of Japan. And so, if you're Japanese and you have agreed to not have a military for the past 70, 80 years or whatever it is, you're looking to the United States to be your protector. And if all of a sudden one day Donald Trump wakes up and says, I don't want to do that anymore, it might make you a little bit nervous. It certainly seemed to make the U.S. military nervous, and it certainly seemed to make the South Koreans a little bit nervous. And there is, I think, a very open question as to why he did this. I have multiple theories. One, like I said yesterday, I don't think Donald Trump's agenda was to get peace or to denuclearize or anything. I don't think that's his agenda. I think his agenda is to sell the idea that he's done that. Just like every other endeavor Donald Trump has ever partaken in. I don't think he actually cared what kind of quality of the steak that he sold was. I think he just wanted to be able to sell the steak. I don't think he ever cared about the quality of the education somebody was getting at Trump University. Just as so long as he could sell the thing. I think that's what he goes into. And if actually striking a deal in some way inhibited his ability to come out and say, I struck a deal, then I don't think he would strike a deal. I just don't think that's the way that he thinks. And certainly that would be consistent with the way that he's operated up to this point.
Now at the sharper image.
It's quite possible. He also believes, like, you come out, you say there's a deal, and everybody has to do it or they won't save face. Like, we're going to build this hotel. And we break ground, and they cut the ribbon, and they bring out the gold shovels, and then just nothing happens, and no one pays attention to it later. Or maybe it does. This is the way I think you see a lot of real estate operators operate. It's also possible that John Bolton, who wanted a summit so that you could get through this quickly, was just encouraging some of this stuff, and none of it happens. I mean, Donald Trump was saying yesterday, full denuclearization starting now. It's going to start now.
I do want to just a little bit. I mean, we'll get to this clip, but I mean, they did already scrap a significant testing site. I'm specifically very skeptical of like the John Bolton 12-dimensional chess site. Very skeptical.
I'm just putting it out there because we're going to have a much better sense in 6 months, obviously. But you can't wholly discount it. I mean, John Bolton is there for a reason. Could be just Iran, but maybe not. Who knows? It is very strange for Donald Trump to just come out and give away ending the largest U.S. war games with there was a shift to the Pacific that has been going on with U.S. foreign policy for a decade at least, maybe more. Certainly the military is there. This is a guy who listens to the generals, right? Or used to 6 months ago. And to come out and unilaterally basically say, here's this big thing that you wanted and you can just have it, is a little bit strange. Here is another competing theory. I don't know. I don't know who tells Donald Trump to do this or not. He doesn't know anything about these military things. But here is Rachel Maddow's best guess. Now, with that said, well, go ahead. Let's play this first.
Russia has just this tiny little border, 11-mile long border with North Korea, with one crossing on a train. And they've got a troubled and varied history over the decades with that country. But Russia is also increasingly straining at its borders right now and shoving back U.S. and Western influence, especially U.S. and Western military presence, anywhere near what it considers to be its own geopolitical interests. And one of the things that they have started to loudly insist on is that the U.S. drop those joint military exercises with South Korea. The U.S. has kept those going as a pillar of U.S. national security strategy for 70 years now. Until last night, when Trump casually announced that that's over now, he's doing away with those, blindsided everybody involved, and gave North Korea something they desperately want and would do almost anything for, except he gave it to them for free. How come?
I mean, it's a legitimate question. She obviously implies that maybe Russia told him to do that, because it's in Russia's interests. And, you know, to a certain extent, there is a quality of like the way that Republicans, their answer to everything is tax cuts. But I mean,
you don't think that that's a bit nuts to imply that Russia gave some type of back channel command to do this to Trump? I'm sorry. I think that's crazy. I think that's.
I don't think that's. I don't think that is any really more nuts of an explanation than. I mean, I don't like
I think you could just follow like the most simple. Like, I guess what it is, and again, I'm not defending North Korea in any way. I actually think now that people are going the opposite end of totally minimizing how obscene that regime is. But for 70 years, right, like going back to a vast majority of people killed in that conflict were North Korean citizens, including civilian massacres. Those exercises.
Let me note one thing. Let me just note one thing. You have already lapped Donald Trump's understanding of the conflict by 4 times.
This is totally true.
So go ahead.
Totally true. But I also don't find it, and this also could, and this is obviously another thing that he doesn't know. But like 70% of South Korean citizens want these negotiations to happen, and there's a movement in South Korea to, at the very least, significantly. There is a distinction between having troops versus having war games on a regular basis that literally play decapitation scenarios with the leadership of North Korea that have a preemptive nuke in them. I mean, those are extremely provocative things. So I think first of all, I think that, yeah, there's definitely a third way between completely bailing on people and totally de-escalating those. And it strikes me that if you're Trump, and Trump can accidentally be right about things, and he said it himself, and I actually take it fairly at face value. He was like, it seemed weird to be sitting and talking like this and then have this war game going on in a couple of weeks. Now, is that blindside his allies? Yes. Is the military going to come up maybe with some, BS way of still? Totally. But I don't see this back. I think the idea of implying that there is some back channel Russia conspiracy, when again, people are losing sight of the basic premise that like, it's good they're talking. To me, I have a problem.
There's two different things here. There's two different things. I can be for the ending of those exercises and still believe that Donald Trump's suggestion that they end or ordering that they end comes from any numerous,
but why not just follow just follow the least conspiratorial, simplest path? Like that's just an obvious thing that would occur. In fact, to somebody who's a simpleton who doesn't know the policy history, right?
We're talking. I totally agree.
Why would we escalate a war game?
I'm not subscribing to the Russia thing.
Yeah, I wish Obama did more of that with Iran. Frankly,
I'm not subscribing to the Russia explanation. But I don't think that it's really so crazy to suggest that Michael Cohen, Felix Sater, that the people they had the back channels with didn't have a list of things that we would like, And in return, you will have, I don't know, 10% share in Gazprom or whatever it is.
Like, I think that I don't discount a lot of this, like, especially you talk the money laundering corruption angle, but I think we're going to need to like actually establish definitively some actual things of what's even been groundedly speculated on which they haven't yet, before we get to
Well, like
secret
what part are you talking about?
I'm talking about there's a lot of really interesting noises there, and I think something's going on, but I don't think they've even by a legal standard, I don't think anybody's like, there hasn't been an indictment yet that specifically dealt with an actual back channel agreement with Russia.
Well, they certainly have had
I'm not saying there's
a lot of
smoke
back
there.
channel.
There's a lot of
Well,
smoke.
no, wait, not smoke. It is definitive that they've had multiple
they've had
meetings.
back channels.
They've
sure.
had multiple meetings where they have lied about what they talked about.
Yes. No one has speculated a secret peace deal with North Korea to benefit us.
Oh, no,
And
no,
that's
no.
extravagantly big,
but
speculation.
No. It's clear that they've had meetings that they've lied about what was discussed there.
Definitely.
We don't know why they would lie.
We have a sense with some that as far as I understand, the most grounded speculation is Ukraine and giving dirt on Hillary Clinton.
It's very possible. I mean, it's also. I mean, it's. We know. So we know a quid, and we know a quo. We know that exists there, right? The offer of a quid, the offer of a quo. It is conceivable, it is impressive that Donald Trump has such a Russia-centric perspective on things, like weaken NATO, weaken the NATO alliance. And I don't know that
I think we can all agree that, like, knowing where that idea came from is of public interest.
Yes, of course. And it is not, I don't think
I agree with that.
that it's so insane to say, like, Russian advisors to him who he does not know are basically lobbying on behalf of Russia, right? Like, it's quite possible he had no idea that Paul Manafort was being paid by these people.
I mean, for what it's worth, we also do know that if
Manafort's giving him advice, like,
But one of
these
the-
are the 5 things you should do. And he goes, okay.
Although what's interesting, what's coming about Manafort, and as this case goes on, is that actually a lot of his sort of positioning inside. Now, he was aligned with a Russian-aligned oligarch kleptocrat there, but he actually was pushing the guy to do things like join the EU and the customs union, which the Russians don't want. So the actual meat of what he's pushing for in Ukraine is a little more complicated.
I'm saying I don't think it is, and I'm not claiming this, and I don't think if I was going to do that story, I wouldn't have framed it in that way, where it seems like the only option is that he got this.
Okay,
but
yes.
But I think the idea that Donald Trump is not at least have people in his orbit who may be pushing interests on behalf of Russia, knowingly or unknowingly, I would bet unknowingly because the guy's an idiot, is not that strange, I don't think. I just don't think it's that strange.
I don't think there's anybody at the meetings right now.
I mean,
I don't think Pompeo or Bolton.
Why did he say we should ease sanctions on this on ZTE, the Chinese company?
That's a specific, clear case of corruption. Which does not take any complication or speculation. There's like a direct personal self-interest, which everybody can see. I'm just saying, whatever. We're arguing about degrees here. Basically.
I mean, look, yes.
You wouldn't.
It's possible in this instance, Trump is operating completely because out of some sense.
Something besides Russia, which I think it probably is something besides Russia.
The only options are not Russia or Trump is secretly an altruistic peacemaker.
Well, what are the other? No, I'm saying that there could be other options. What are they?
Like Kim just said, hey, it'd be nice if you did this.
Yeah, and he said, and like in every other meeting or context that we know about the guy, sure, I'll do that. It makes sense. Why would we talk peace and have a war game? It doesn't make sense.
It is also
Kim
possible.
Kissed his ass, and he likes him a lot now because he's very
it's
susceptible
not
to flattery.
It's
Maybe
not like
he
the
wants
North
to open a
Koreans
bunch
don't
of
know what they're
hotels
doing.
in
It's
North
not
Korea.
like the South Koreans haven't been, by the way, facilitating this whole process. And I am sure they didn't want it this way, but they definitely, the South Korean government, will be down with scaling down those operations.
Outside of this sort of speculation, though, like I think there's a good reason to be ambivalent about this entire thing. It's because, like, I think the most likely scenario is it doesn't change the status quo a whole lot. I mean, the communication stuff I think is worth noting.
Yes,
but let's say like it's not like the Bolton thing where they're going to do a war.
Yeah, I don't believe
it's basically just like he has a propaganda victory heading into the midterm elections, and then not a whole lot changes besides that.
I don't think he needed
Which is
to
true.
announce the end of war games to get that propaganda victory.
Well, if
I mean, I you know,
On
like,
the flip side, what would be a great
And if he
scenario
could be
is he set a
manipulated-
new normal, then Bernie Sanders is president in 2020, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, the new standard now is that we negotiate and we try to actually solve this.
I'm
That's
not
a good
saying
thing.
I don't like it. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about the motivations of Donald Trump, and I don't. And if I had to bet on motivations of Donald Trump, and on one side of the ledger, it's he was doing it because he was asked by the North Korean leader, versus he has some material benefit that will come to him because of it.
Or
I
both.
gotta
Well,
go.
we already know the material benefit. I think, again, it's simple as a coup, propaganda, midterms. I mean, sure. I don't know.
I don't
There could be
see that
secret
direct line.
Well, dude,
between
I mean, the
that-
other really simple thing is, I mean, they did literally mention beachfronts and hotels. The material benefit could be right in front of our
It
faces.
could be
Yeah,
that
he said
too.
that.
It could be that. It could
he
be that.
probably
put
wants
in the
to
video.
open some hotels there and brag about what a good job he did. And like, we got to judge this by the outcome in the end. And if the outcome is that, you know, Trump gets to brag about it, tensions are ratcheted down slightly in the region, maybe we do a little less war games, a little less
The flip side of it is
then that's good.
Yes. The flip side of that is that, you know, it gives more fodder for Abe to arm the Japanese.
Well, that's happening regardless. That ship
this
has already
certainly
sailed.
helps, right?
No, but that ship is, I mean, there's this whole other dimension of this. There's this new report in Sludge, and I'm going to interview the author on Thursday about how, like, basically the army general that is in control of Asia policy is just a pure, like, he's gone between military and arms lobbying, and they want and have facilitated sales to Taiwan, and they want Japan to arm up. That's been in the works for a while.
Right. And this is
you know,
going to
Yeah,
certainly-
this definitely...
I mean,
definitely,
could there be a more monumental invitation to do that?
But the
than
reason
this?
that's happening regardless is because of China. It's not because of this. The
I-
long-term ramp up is because of China.
Well, this
That's why.
These military games were not just about North Korea.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
mean,
like
That's the
that-
real big picture.
Well, of
here.
course,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, that's why there's so many different other
Right,
players going like,
right.
hey, wait a second. You know, you just gave away, like, you didn't just give away something to, you gave our protection away.
And probably the deeper structural problem, like the conversation that people are going to need to have, and sometimes I think we're like a kind of knee-jerk left response is right in some ways, but incredibly insufficient, is that there will be probably a lot of U.S. military pullback from this area just because of like the raw power that China is going to exercise. And people could say that's a victory against U.S. imperialism. Maybe in some ways it is, and that's great. It doesn't mean any situation is going to improve because there's a new imperial patron dominating that neighborhood.
Calling from a 832 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from?
Hey, Sam, it's Matt from Houston.
Hello, Matt. What's on your mind?
Hey, just you guys were talking about Trump getting his idea to call off the war games from Putin. There was an article in Wall Street Journal back in January, I think by Rebecca Bauhaus is her name. Anyway, it's called like How to Talk to Trump a Year In. And in it, it says back in January that he got the idea to call off war games from Putin. And Kurt Eichenwald tweeted this out earlier. That Mattis kind of talked him back while reassuring him it was a good idea. And in response to that, Trump ordered the Defense Department to not publicize the
To what?
this idea.
Putin got to you. We can't hear what you just said.
Don't make the call. Don't make it.
Are you there? Oh my God.
Hey, Sam, I'm
won.
here. Can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you hear what I said about Rebecca Bauhaus?
Okay, we heard you
article in Wall
say
Street
that
Journal
she
back in
wrote a
January?
piece in January saying that that Putin literally told Trump to end those things. Okay, around the same time,
Well,
Mr. Trump had the idea to counter. I'm going to read from the article: how to counter nuclear threat
Okay,
posed
thanks,
by
Dan.
North
I'm gonna
Korea, which he got after speaking to Russian President Vladimir Putin. If the U.S. stopped joint military exercises with South Koreans, it would help moderate Kim Jong Un's behavior.
Just gave me an amazing idea.
I mean, okay, maybe not so crazy that he got it from Putin because
this is-
he
you know what's
literally got it from Putin.
That's actually no. That makes far more sense to me than like the sort of like shadowy advisors or secret meetings things.
Well,
Like, no,
okay.
yeah, he's just on the phone with Putin. No,
That's more what
I didn't
Rachel-
even think of
that's
that.
what-
I didn't even think of that.
that's more what
That's
Rachel-
foolish of me. I should have thought of that.
So Maddow's
That
real crime is
actually-
not having that reference.
What did you
Right.
say?
Maddow's real crime is not having that.
Not
citation.
Well,
having
maybe
that-
she
that's
got
what I
to
said.
it later, but it's a very like you could have just opened it with here's an odd like there was a conversation 6 months ago.
Right,
Like that's
exactly.
what she should have done.
Have you ever heard of a journal? Well, there's also a place called Wall Street. Together, they made the Wall Street Journal. And
Remember Thomas Edison, the telephone? Yeah, that was a thing. I'll use those things now.
Well, we lost the
Donald
caller,
Trump
but
and
thank you.
Vladimir Putin used those things 6 months ago to
right.
share ideas.
So we should concede that maybe it's not so crazy.
Oh no, I will not concede that. Okay.
Even though
fucking
it's like
fucking
almost even
certifiable.
more explicit
Yeah.
than I was coming up with. My problem was that I was being too elliptical.
Yeah.
Instead of him just
Well, no,
literally
you were
being
into
told
problem. Yeah, no,
by
no.
Putin.
Right. We all see.
Donald,
I was,
do this.
My instincts,
Okay.
my instincts to go to the simplest explanation possible were totally right. I just discounted the most obvious simple explanation.
Donald, I want you to do this. Okay.
Right. I can't. That was a real elusive obvious right there. It's
Well,
like, why
now
you
we
think-
know.
Why
now
you
we
think
know.
this is the meeting with
now-
a lawyer and
now-
all the? I get on the phone. I say you do.
Right. Now we know why they don't need a back channel.
Right.
Because the front channel works just as well.
Well, you have
Can,
back.
can you imagine
tell the man.
Putin sitting back going like, I can't fucking believe we spent all this time trying to like have him surrounded by advisors, and all I had to do was call him.
We'll just have
All
to
I had
call.
to do was call him. We had to
Yes.
go in and talk about adoption, and we had to
All
go
of
talk
this
about all
nonsense.
this stuff. And all I had to do was call a guy up and say, dude, do this. And
Why
he's
don't we
just going to do it.
Just kill the Maltese professor. I don't care. I can
We
call
spent
him.
so much time getting him into a hotel with the video cameras, and we get the prostitutes there with the pee.
I actually
and all
have to
this.
see
All I had
this.
to do is I had to call him.
You just had to ask.
All you have to, yeah. All you do is ask.
See that? See that? All you had to do was ask. But yet you beat around the bush and you play the games,
Oh, this
lad.
complicated
All you
stuff.
had to do was ask.
I said, you don't need what is it? Compact or whatever
Yeah.
the hell thing is. You don't need
Compromise.
it. You just
I
ask.
am compromised. I am compromised.
My state of being is compromised.
Look it, I go out with this on my head.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Just ask.
What are you exposing?
You
Just
want something,
ask.
ask.
I come pre-compromised.
Wow. We got to cut that debate, and then with like put up a
amazing.
chyron that says 20 minutes later this call.
That's amazing. That's like when Joe Budden did like a 2-hour podcast on Drake's first track, and then they immediately had to go back when Pusha T put his response out, and he's just like, "Oh no, I was wrong. Pusha T won."
What is it?
Except
I
it's
have
not even wrong. It's just like, right, of course, that was the obvious missing piece, was just the phone call with Putin where he just told him what to do. Totally remiss to not think of that. Like
I have Michael McLuhan right here.
Michael was right. Yeah, exactly. Michael was right to follow the simplest thread, but he forgot what the real simplest thread is.
You just
My
called me.
phone conversations with Vladimir Putin, where he tells
All right.
me stuff and I do it.